Hey everybody, this is part two of Crete. I got a little bit more to talk about bulls and bull imagery, and I want to take you to a very special place on the island of Crete. I was actually really lucky to be able to go visit Crete a couple of years ago. This is, if you can see my screen, this is mainland Greece, and this big is the biggest island of the Greek islands called Crete, and you can kind of see it over here. Well, it was a powerhouse 4,000 years ago. Because why? Because Crete wanted for nothing. It had all the animals. It was very forested. It had plenty of lumber. It was a huge exporter of oil and honey and wine. And so olive oil and olives and grapes were huge export. And they had a wonderful relationship with all of these areas. This is modern day Turkey. This is the African continent. This is Europe. This is Italy, and then this is Greece. So here it is, look in the center of the Mediterranean island. One of the things you're for the test at the end of the semester is Crete, early Cretan writings had something called, let me just stop share for a second because it looked a little confusing. Crete had three, not two, three writing systems. Those three writing systems were hieroglyphs, as you probably heard before, which is a pre-Indo-European language. We've talked about that term before. It had something else called Linear A. Pre-Indo-European language that hasn't been deciphered yet. Maybe one of you will study the classics and become an archaeologist and figure out how to decipher that language. Linear B, let me show you. Linear B is the type of writing that became known as an early Greek language, right? So that means that there's really early stories of some of the Greek gods, like Apollo, like possibly Athena. She might have originated in Crete, as in worship of her started like maybe 4,000 years ago. One of the reasons why we love Crete and some of its beautiful ancient palace structures is because it was such a powerful place for so long that those Indo-European migrations, right, Zeus's people, or the people that came and had this overthrowing of earlier matrifocal culture, those they were horse riding, right? They were horse riding invaders or horse riding Indo-European peoples. Horses don't swim very well. So you can imagine then this island was one of the last to fall to some of these the sway of these other cultures coming through. And by then Crete was really on its way, let's take a look at this, to becoming, going from Minoan Crete civilization, see the green here, to a Mycenaean. All of this we've talked about a little bit is all before what's called the Dark Ages, 1100 BC to 800 BC. This is when they think the Trojan War actually occurred. And some guy named Heimlin or something did the digging and actually found where the city of Troy may have been here on the northern coast of what is now Turkey. And so we get into this archaic period, right? This is where we have Homer. And then we get into this other period of the classical. This is when we have our great playwrights, the beginning of democracy, right? So when they're writing down in the golden age of Greece about Minotaur, right? This is stuff that these writers of this period are writing down after all of the oral tellings from way back long ago. So Crete is kind of like a nursery, story, like, or a beginnings or origin stories tend to take place there. So I had the ability to go check out, look how busy it is, these amazing, like the amazing ruins of Knossos, which is on the northeast side of Crete. Okay, it was fabulous. But you know what? Even the people that finished the excavation, this is Sir Arthur Evans, and he looks like something right out of Indiana Jones, doesn't he? The first thing he did When he showed up, he didn't find or discover kenosis, by the way. But the first thing he did was he dug straight down. Why? Why do you think? Because he was looking for a labyrinth. Right? Because the Minotaur was supposedly kept in the labyrinth underneath the palace, King Minos's palace, right? There was nothing there. This labyrinth he came looking for, by the way, he looked everywhere. And it wasn't even a labyrinth that he found. What did he find that was everywhere, you all? Well, I will be glad to tell you and show you. He found this everywhere. The symbol of the Labrys, carved into stones, ceremonial wrought with gold, as well as used possibly for defense or cutting down trees or maybe killing an animal for a feast or to, for food. And so this was something that the Labrys, so what Sir Arthur Evans found then was the labyrinth was the home of the Labrys. And that's what that meant, which is interesting, right? Okay, let's check out this idea of bulls. So, we've talked about bulls before and bulls in the last video. They all over this huge structure of Kenosis Palace, which is actually not even a palace, it's a temple. There are symbols of the bull found everywhere, but the bull is probably not understood the way it is of like just male virility. It could be that too. But those two horns oftentimes could have been, according to scholars, things that represented beginnings and endings, right? Sun and moon cycle. Look at how the Labrys has the butterfly or bee has the two wings. So this duality is really powerful and really prominent in ancient Crete, right? We're talking still 4,000 years ago. There's also, dig this, and this will tie into our temple in a minute. You see where the two mountains come together. During the solstice, the sun rises right here. And so this could have also been symbolic, like the horns are symbolic, of a magical sunrise when the sun rises right here and lights up part of the temple of Kenosis. So I'm going to show you, maybe I won't show you this part yet, but this was like this honeycomb. This is a recreation, obviously. It was just building after building. And like it was, the labyrinth was like, that's what the temple was, this very complex building that existed. There was no castle or palace of a king. As a matter of fact, there's no evidence of any warrior or kingly caste anywhere. The only evidence they really have is of women not ruling, but women in these ceremonial capacities. As a matter of fact, so much of the ritual is designed around women priestesses. Let's go back to that. That'll be part 3. Let's go back to the bull for a minute. Isn't this beautiful? This is a Cretan vase. Here you have your labyrinth. Let's see, your Labrys, another Labrys, and this is a honeycomb. They were really into honey. As a matter of fact, they used honey, made honey, would use honey as an offering 10 days after summer solstice. And they thought that bees and bulls were neatly tied together. As a matter of fact, there's writing that says that bees are born out of bull carcasses. I'm sure somebody just saw some bees wafting around, right? But that was interesting. So you can see more of their ideas about the bull. So one more thing I want to show you about the bull is this very famous stone mosaic of what's called the bull leaping ritual. Every 8 years, they had this ritual. And as our tour guide explained, this is bull leaping going well. So just so you know, the white skin represents women and the red skin represents men. So this woman is literally taking the bull by the horns and then this is just possibly, or holding him while he flips over, and that she's either landing or catching him. But by all means, you could see how any number of combinations could be possible. So it also shows, look at this. This is the bull also moving or in flight or charging. And so this is very much, is this like kind of like an early bullfight where you grab the bull by the horns, you flip over? It's like an acrobatic, right? It's like this represented something in terms of an idolized view of the bull. They're not worshiping the bull, they're recognizing the great energy that is in flux, that is in movement, that it exists. It's this energy that Crete, and then partially later on, the Greeks would see in terms of an agricultural society utilizing the energies of nature to be able to grow the food, have the food, harvest the food, eat the food. Part of how an agricultural society has part of the agricultural society has this understanding of how energy manifests in the world. And Crete is one of these places that explicitly shows the state of energy of nature. And it is it's rather than it being abstract and whatever, like this is going to happen later, the imagery of Crete is showing you nature as a sacred reality and how the energy rises and falls. So that in our next video, we'll get a little bit more into this idea of the goddess that was worshipped there and the M word. So I'll see you back here for part 3. Thanks.